Welcome everyone to the final in a series of market briefings we've been running over the last week to update you all on the various market situations around the world. For those who have not been on the last five and don't know me, my name is Lee Sorensen. I'm from the Industry Relations team at Tourism Australia. And today I'm really pleased to be able to bring you our Japan and South Korea market briefing. I'll be getting us started here this morning and then facilitating some question and answers at the end if we have any that come through. While we won't have any updates on border openings here today, we do want to keep you informed around what's going on, what we're up to in our markets, and give you the opportunity to ask any questions. This morning, you'll hear from our Executive General Manager for Eastern Markets and Aviation Development, Andrew Hogg, our Japanese Country Manager, Derek Baines, our South Korean Account Manager, Jina Jo, and also attending for any questions you may have at the end will be Yuri Kinoshita, our Japanese Partnership Marketing Executive. Andrew will take you through a regional overview and then we'll dig down into the markets in a bit more detail. And importantly, we'll talk to what we're working on for long-term recovery. And then if you do have any questions, we'll come to those at the end and take some time to answer those. So just some general housekeeping before I hand over to Andrew. We do often get asked about issues with videos and people not being able to get good quality video. Often we find that's because of the internet connection on the attendees end. So unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do about that. The webinar today is being recorded and will be available to watch on demand post the event. I mentioned the question and answer at the end. If you do have any questions to ask of the panelists, please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen and just type those in as we go through. And then we'll try to address those at the end. Any questions that we don't have, or sorry, any questions that we can't answer, we'll come back to you on email with an answer to those post the webinar. But right now, I'm going to hand over to Andrew to take us through that regional overview.
Thanks very much, Lee, and good morning. It's great to have so many people join these industry updates. And as Lee mentioned, there's been a series of updates, and it's of great importance for us to not only receive the feedback from this, but to also shape the direction in which we're moving in many of our international markets. Today, as Lee mentioned, we're going to be hearing from Derek Baines, our country manager in Japan, who joined Tourism Australia not so long ago. Derek is no stranger to Japan, has lived and worked there in the past, and has continued to work for Qantas over many years, not only in the Japan market, but other areas as well, so well versed in that area. And it's great to have Jina Jo online today. Jinha is our country manager in Korea and does a fantastic job in that market as well. Jina has been with us for 2 years and has seen the Korean market grow to nearly 300,000 people arrivals in the 2019 year. And in Japan, we've seen significant growth with additional aviation capacity, with services such as ANA to Perth, the Melbourne services with JAL and Qantas, and additional services that have been announced pre-COVID by ANA into Sydney. So two very important markets in Japan. It's reached nearly 500,000 or just over 500,000 arrivals into Australia, which has been a significant recovery over many years, and great work by the industry in re-attracting and showing and developing new products to our Japanese consumers as well. So I'm going to hand over to Derek, and please, there's a Q&A. Make sure you send those Q&A, any questions and answers through. We'd be delighted to answer those, and I'll hand over to Derek to go through the presentation. And thanks very much again for joining us today.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning to provide the Japan market update. And as Lee mentioned, Yuri Kinoshita, our Partnership Marketing Executive, is also with us to help answer any questions that you might have at the end of the presentation. To start, we'd just like to give a flavour of the market, and Andrew mentioned that we have been around 500,000 Japanese visitors to Australia in 2019, just over 500,000 for the 12 months to January. And of course, that has begun to drop since the borders have been closed. But our growth back to 500,000 was a very strong trajectory. And of course, we all hope and work towards restoring that number and more as borders reopen and the markets return to normal. It's a very lucrative market, as I'm sure all of you are aware and have been enjoying the growth in numbers. Around $2 billion of expenditure has been outlaid by Japanese visitors to Australia in the 12-month period, and we'd certainly like to grow that in the medium to long term up to 3 billion or more. Just over half of the visitors in the last 12 months have been first-time visitors to Australia, and just under half return visitors. And for those return visits, of course, as we all know, we need to keep renewing our product, to keep refreshing, and to be able to present new and exciting experiences for the Japanese visitors. This graph is an illustration of how the markets have grown in the last 15 or so years. And the brown bar is the markets from Japan outbound to various countries. And as you'll see on the right-hand side, in 2019, around 20 million Japanese visitors left Japan for overseas trips. And the blue bars are foreign visitors heading into Japan. And by 2019, there were 31 million visits into Japan. That blue section represents the enormous growth that has been enjoyed by the Japanese inbound market since the Visit Japan program was instituted back around 2003. Importantly, for the Australian business, we have, as we've talked about, around 500,000 visitors coming to Australia from Japan in 2019. That represents under 3% of the total visits from Japan to all destinations. So I think it highlights to us the enormous longer term growth opportunities that we have to increase Australia's share of that lucrative Japanese outbound market. COVID-19 has had an impact on Japan, as it has on just about all of our markets around the world. In the most recent 3 to 4 weeks, the number of reported cases has actually increased again in Japan. And you'll see on the right-hand side there, as I move the cursor, that there's been another increase. This pattern is actually a very similar pattern to the one that we're experiencing here in Australia right now. In the last 4 or 5 days, the numbers have started to ease off again, and let's hope, of course, that that trend continues. The majority of the recent cases have been experienced in the Tokyo region, but over the last few days, the numbers in Osaka and Nagoya, being the second and third largest cities respectively, have also started to increase. But let's hope that over time, this number can ease off again. Around 30,000 cases in total have been reported, and testing for COVID has increased significantly lately, which has identified a number of extra cases. In terms of the worldwide benchmarks, Japan has been doing very well, and of course with a very strong health system and the behaviour of the population, the number of cases in worldwide terms has been contained at a relatively low level. Let's have a look at the travel sentiment and consumer behaviour that we're seeing in Japan. And as you may know, if you've been participating in these webinars for other markets, we're tracking every couple of weeks the travel sentiment and consumer behaviour indicators in major markets around the world, which is a very useful way of tracking the trends. In the case of Japan, and if we look at the left-hand side here, the consumer confidence index is in the 50s, and 100 is seen as a strong level. Anything above 100 is very, very positive. Anything below 100 is considered to be on the weaker side. So in Japan, over the last 3 or 4 months, the consumer confidence index is hovering around the mid to high 50s. And that has been, I think, the experience in Japan now for quite some time. It reflects general economic situation as well as the more recent coronavirus and COVID situation. Not surprisingly, the travel intention of Japanese people for overseas travel over the next 3 to 6 months is still very, very low. And as we're all still experiencing the coronavirus impact, it's not a major surprise that we're still here in the single-digit figures. Booking intention follows a very, very similar pattern in that single-figure area. What we would like to highlight here, though, is that Australia is seen as a relatively safe destination to travel when travel recommences and when people start to book. We have seen a slight slip in the last couple of weeks from the high 60s down to the high 50s, but the majority of people are seeing Australia as a relatively safe place to travel, which is very heartening. And as we look at our competitor destinations around the world, I think we can see those numbers as a great opportunity for us to capitalize on the market opportunities when borders do begin to open in due course. This slide's quite busy, and I'd encourage you to have a look at it when we send the pack to you. The key points, though, to make on the webinar right now, I think, are that we have a number of triggers for international travel over the next 6 months, as identified in our surveys, and a number of barriers. So to have a look at the triggers, what is actually going to lead to somebody making a trip? What are the positives that sit behind this situation at the moment? Well, one of the biggest ones is I feel like I really need a holiday. And I think we all probably share in that sentiment. The second one, which is also quite a large one for the Japan market, is that I now have the time to do it. An interesting phenomenon there for Japan. And the third reason that is seen as a positive trigger, I would like to replace a previously delayed trip. So there's some pent-up demand there, which again is something that we all should be able to capitalize on in due course. If we look at the barriers, however, they're largely being identified as coronavirus related. The biggest one, which is 56%, is that respondents are saying that they're afraid they may contract coronavirus. And another fairly high figure, 29%, in a related sense, are saying that they wouldn't like to spread the virus to other people if they were to travel. And another 28% are saying that, just generally speaking, they're not interested in international travel right at the moment. So I would encourage you to have a look at those numbers when the pack is sent to you all later today. Let's take a step back and look at some of the responses we've been getting to our major surveys in recent times. This survey was done around the middle of 2019. And that was, let's say, a normal period where we're experiencing normal situation and Australia was enjoying a relatively high growth rate in terms of travel from Japan. This is a very interesting chart from my perspective because it looks at the drivers of destination choice amongst the Japanese high-value travellers, the HVTs, so-called. And this doesn't just relate to Australia. This is one step back in the process where we look at the destination choice when our consumers are making that decision about where they will go. Clearly, many, many choices, great destinations, great products all around the world. Where will we go on this next holiday or on a holiday in the near future? Very interesting for me as I've come into this role to look at this, and it's, I think, a very, very key piece of research for all of us in the industry, for suppliers, operators, for wholesalers, for us here at Tourism Australia, as well as we plan our campaigns. Good food and wine is a standout consideration for destination choice, fairly closely followed by safety and security, world-class beauty and wildlife, value for money, history and heritage, and a lot of other factors as well, which all go into the mix of somebody making a decision to travel to a particular destination. We expect that in the immediate aftermath of the coronavirus situation, and when borders do reopen, that naturally visitors will be very concerned about safety and security, and that factor, those factors will be foremost in people's minds as they make decisions. It was always in the strong times last year, number 2 factor, safety and security at 60%. That may be number 1 factor again. The research will bear that out. But as we return to more normal situation, in the medium to long term, let's recognise that good food and wine, food and drink, has been a very, very significant driver of destination choice. So for all of us who are planning our campaigns, our marketing, our product and service delivery, I think this is a very important factor to consider, how we can better promote and develop our food and wine and food and drink offering for the Japanese market, in line with all of the other key drivers, such as promoting our world-class beauty and wildlife, naturally our safety and security, and in a way that presents value for money to our visitors. We're highlighting here 5 key points which relate to the distribution from Japan. And the first one we'd like to point out is that in discussions we're having with wholesalers in market, there is an enormous appetite to understand how our suppliers in Australia are reacting and adapting to the coronavirus situation. So what we would absolutely recommend is that through your regular relationships with inbound tour operators and wholesalers and other Japanese distribution partners, to keep them informed of the state of play for your business, how you're coping with the situation, any operational changes to your business, and, for example, whether you have been able to join up to the ATEC or ATIC COVID readiness programs, whatever you're doing to be able to welcome visitors, and any operational issues that the distribution partners would wish to know about. The second point is in terms of the selling ability of the wholesalers and agents in Japan. We have information that most of the retail shops of the key travel agents have now reopened, but certainly not all, and some are operating at reduced level with reduced hours. But largely they have now reopened after some time where many of those shop fronts were closed for business. And more broadly speaking, in terms of distribution strategy changes, We are seeing already announcements from some of the majors that the number of retail shops that they will support throughout the country in Japan may decrease over time. In the recent financial results released by HIS, for example, they specifically called out that they will be reducing the number of retail stores, in line, however, with an increase in their online and digital marketing and sales activity. So certainly not reducing their footprint or not reducing their efforts. To the contrary, absolutely increasing them, but doing so in a slightly different way by reducing the reliance on bricks and mortar retail and moving slightly more into the online environment. Coming with that may well be also in many cases a slightly lower reliance on printed brochures. The large, glossy, heavily detailed printed brochures that we all know in the Japan market are probably still going to be around, but there may be fewer of them, and they will be, I think, adapted in their purpose as time goes on. Air capacity, clearly the major underpinning factor for travel from Japan to Australia. Throughout this period, ANA continues to operate 3 per week service between Tokyo and Sydney. There'll be a lot of freight on board that aircraft, but also it is available for passenger traffic in a limited sense. So ANA continues that. As we know though, however, Qantas, Jetstar, JAL and Virgin are not currently operating on the route. The Japanese airlines are tending to announce their schedules on a month-by-month basis at this stage. But we continue to work with the airlines to understand their plans, and as we know and realise, the resumption of air capacity or the increase in air capacity is going to be critical to the overall recovery in the market. Point number 5, last but not least, shows the size and strength and potential of the travel industry within Japan. The Japanese domestic market is a real big focus right now and is being seen as a large part of the economic recovery program that the Japanese government has put in place. The government has announced over the last few months, and last week the campaign began, the Go-To campaign for Japanese domestic travel. Around 18 billion Australian dollar equivalent has been earmarked to support this program. So it's pretty obvious from that a lot of stock is being put in the tourism industry in Japan in a domestic sense to help the economic recovery. This has become a little bit controversial in some quarters because whilst there are no formal travel restrictions now within Japan, a number of the regions and prefectures are still somewhat nervous about large amounts of people travelling. However, a very large program, and we'll continue to monitor that as we go. The last slide for Japan is something that we see as illustrating our key programs in market over the various phases of our COVID recovery. So you may have seen these phases before, but as we have emerged from the panic and lockdown phase, more towards rising optimism at this point, and ultimately to free movement when borders reopen and restrictions are completely lifted. So to give you an overview of what the Tourism Australia team in Japan has been doing, and I'd like to pay tribute to the team up there who are working tirelessly right now to to keep the market very interested and very aware of the Australian offerings. Consumer marketing and PR across the top, and our B2B, our distribution activities down the bottom, underpinned by our integrated activity with state and territory tourist organisations, our One Voice activities. We work hand in hand with the STOs and the territory tourism organisations on a regular basis. In terms of consumer marketing, over this lockdown period, we've been using our social media channels to good effect and have been growing those channels throughout the process. To give you an understanding of the reach that we have, and as I say, this is growing week by week, we have over 200,000 Facebook followers on the Tourism Australia site in Japan. And of course, this is in Japanese language and hits right at the heart of the opportunity. With Twitter, around 38,000 followers, and Instagram, 21. All of these are growing. In the last couple of months, we've had some very good success with a number of campaigns. One was the Australian Memories campaign that was run in May and June using user-generated content, whereby visitors who had been to Australia in the past posted their favourite photographs with a caption. We then selected the best of those and created a 1-minute video, which was posted back on the social media channels. There was a lot of media interest in this and great participation. We had over 1,000 people participate by posting photos, and there are a couple there on the left. A great photo of Nature's Window, WA, and a Hamilton Island photo, which is quite lovely there. And as you can see, I'm virtually in Hamilton Island today. We've continued to develop our Australia.jp website, and that is an ongoing opportunity for us to continue to position Australia.jp as the major go-to resource for the market. Our social media feeds into that, and there's a major content refresh happening right now, which will be able to feed more and more relevant and exciting content into Australia.jp and the social channels. We enjoy a good relationship with media in Japan, and a bi-weekly EDM to media highlights the most relevant stories for media interest. As we move into Rising Optimism, we will continue to focus on social and digital. We've developed a new resource hub for content, which is available to distribution partners. Available to distribution partners to use in their own media. We're working on press tours both before and after the borders open. Before the borders open, we'll be working with Japanese media who are located here in Australia to have them produce content and stories to run back in Japan in their own media. A number of multi-channel activities are also being planned, so watch this space. There's some very exciting stuff coming. On the distribution side, we recently started a trade EDM to around 55,000 agents. The intention here is to get right to all of the distribution, and it's part of our integrated distribution strategy, whereby we work in a strategic way with the key distributors. We work with the frontline staff through the Aussie Specialist Program, and now we are talking directly to 55,000 agents right across Japan. For the Aussie Specialists, we've been training over 2,000 agents, 1,700 have certified. In the last few months, we've done 28 webinars with the trade, and they have been doing well, even during times when a number of these staff have been stood down. They've been participating. And as we move forward, we want to, of course, continue to drive demand for Australia and facilitate conversion, and working with our airline partners, wholesalers, continuing our trade EDMs, and then when the opportunity permits, to move back into our events program with ATE, Tourism Expo Japan, etc. And of course, a continuing focus on Aussie Specialist. Well, in 20 minutes, hopefully that was a reasonable overview of the opportunity, the state of play in the market, and the key programs and activities that we are engaged in. Please keep in touch with us, and we'll be sending this out to you today. Thanks very much for your time. And I'd like now to hand over to Gina, who will give the update for South Korea. Thanks, Gina.
Thanks, Derek. Good morning, everyone. I'm Gina Jo, based in Seoul, Korea. Very delighted to meet you virtually here today to give you an update for the Korean market. With that, let me take you through the general market overview and COVID-19 update for the Korean market. Okay, then let's learn about Korea's outbound travel market first. I love showing this first graph whenever I have a chance to present about our Korean market, because it shows how much Koreans love traveling. You might not know, but South Korea is still technically at war with North Korea. So we Koreans were not allowed to travel abroad till 1989 for security reasons. And just 1 year after 1988, when the Seoul Olympic Game was held, the overseas travel restriction was lifted. And ever since, for the last 30 years, Korea's outbound travel market saw a double-digit growth almost every year. And now when you see the last year's figure, you can see that nearly 29 million of Koreans traveled abroad. This is a remarkable number as a country of 50 million population, because this means nearly 60% of Koreans traveled every year, a highest ratio per capita in the world, proving Koreans are really adventurous and resilient travelers. And among 29 Koreans who traveled abroad last year, you might want to know where the Koreans travel. As you can see, the top 10 popular travel destinations, distance matters the most, as 80% of the entire outbound travel market accounts for Asian countries with less than 6-hour flight time. And the USA is the only single country in the top 10 list as a long haul. Okay, then where will Australia stand for Korea? When you see our performance, 280,000 Koreans visited Australia last year, which is only 1% of our whole outbound market share. However, we are 10th ranked and spending $1.5 billion collectively. One of the challenges we have in increasing the number of Korean arrivals to Australia is limited air capacity. We have weekly 21 direct flights only between Korea and Australia. And just for your information, there are over 200 weekly flights between Korea and USA, which is 10 times larger than our capacity we have for Australia. And between Japan and Australia, there are over also 70 weekly flights. And that's why our team is making every effort in maintaining a strong relationship with airline partners for airlift opportunities together with STOs. Good news is Jetstar launched a new flight service to Gold Coast from last December. And Asiana also offered a charter flight service to Melbourne for 2 months from last December as well, which was quite successful despite our big obstacles like COVID-19 and the bushfires. So Asiana especially is seriously considering to make it a regular flight to Melbourne. And another good news is one of the Korea's LCC, T-Way, already obtained the traffic right to Sydney. And they also consider launching a direct flight service to Sydney as well. These plans are on hold because of COVID-19. But we'll continue to work closely with them to make that happen. So let's move on to COVID-19 update. In the early stage of COVID-19, we had thousands of infections from one strain called religious group. And following that, Korea became the second highest country with the number of cases. So following China, Korea was blocked from many countries in the early stage as well. But now the situation has subsided. The Korean government took a lot of initiative to tackle this outbreak efficiently, which I believe very well. We even invented a drive-through testing facility to get as many as people to get tested. The next 2 pages here, biweekly Korea's consumer sentiment tracking report done by our research team in Sydney, the same one that Derek showed for Japan. I won't go too detail as we will also share the presentation deck so you can take a look later on. But overall, intention to travel to Australia slightly went down due to the surging number of cases in Victoria. But you can see that most of metrics of consumers' confidence, attitude, travel and booking intention are quite stable for the Korean market. So to summarize our situation, overall, the COVID-19 is under control nationwide compared to many other markets. Now we have only a single digit or a small double-digit number of new cases daily since mid-April. So as Koreans, we feel quite fortunate because as you can see, these below pictures, we've been maintaining social distancing and personal hygiene very strictly, including wearing masks all the time from the beginning of the outbreak till now. We've never been a lockdown situation. Business has been as usual. So most of offices, including our office here in Korea, and other commercial sectors like restaurants, bars, department stores have never been closed completely nationwide. So many global economists positively view that Korea's local economy is not going to be as badly impacted as other countries with drastic shutdown of all business. And I should say, Koreans are known to be quite resilient and adventurous, or in other words, a little reckless and impatient. So we have a very fast moving on culture. And now Koreans get antsy and anxious of travel. In fact, many hotels in popular travel destinations in Jeju Island and Busan enjoy already like over 80 to 90% occupancy. And domestic flight operation has been recovered to the level of 80% year on year. So we cautiously expect that Korea's outbound travel market can improve sooner than any other markets. So now the question is when the borders will open and is it safe to travel abroad? And the biggest hindrance we have is the mandatory 2-week quarantine after returning from overseas countries. Unless this quarantine restriction is lifted, not many Koreans will travel abroad anyway. Another concern is numerous travel agencies and airlines will not be able to survive. In Korea, there are 2 million people in the travel and airline industry, and currently 80% of them are in hibernation, and many of them might not be able to return to work even when the market is ready, which is really tragic. However, I believe this could be an opportunity to create healthier and more sustainable environment in the travel industry in Korea, because in the past, there has been over competition among travel agencies undercutting their margin, distributing really inexpensive products mostly. So more solid and financially stable travel agencies will remain, will be more interested in developing quality products for high value travelers as well. Okay, moving on to the new trend about what COVID-19 will bring into the travel market for Koreans. I showed you the top 10 popular travel destinations for Koreans, but regardless, there will be a whole new chapter and a new paradigm following the COVID-19 in terms of criteria of selecting a travel destination. Safety will become the priority, and Koreans look for those destinations of less affected from the outbreak and unpolluted, less densely populated countries. So basically, the Australia will have great potential, and other trends I've stated here might be quite similar findings applicable to all other markets, I believe. Maybe one trend more distinct for Korean consumers will be the last bullet point. One of the concerns that we have, not only TA Korea, but also other NTOs in Korea, is that Koreans strongly believe that Korea is much safer than any other countries. So it can be a challenge to make them travel abroad. So COVID-19 will certainly make Koreans travelers more polarized. In the past, an overseas trip wasn't really a luxury thing for Koreans. Middle class or even less affordable Koreans can travel abroad at least once a year to a close destination like Japan, Vietnam, or China. But now many of us don't want to take a risk of traveling with strangers, sitting next to each other on economy class, or staying at a crowded hotel. So after COVID-19, overseas trips will be more for high-value travelers who can afford business class seats or staying at exclusive villas to minimize the contacts with others. And less affordable people will just take a domestic trip. Nevertheless, there was a survey conducted by the largest social commerce team and according to the survey result, Koreans, yes, will remain very conservative when it comes to traveling abroad, but it's really great to learn that Australia has been voted as the most preferred destination that Koreans wish to travel after COVID-19. So I am echoing this over and over, but Australia has a really great advantage because our safe and sustainable, eco-friendly, friendly image will resonate well for the Korean travelers after COVID-19. Okay, let's move on to our strategy and recovery plans. Everything is unclear and no one knows when the COVID-19 crisis will end. And so with our limited budget and resources, instead of investing our huge effort for the brand campaign, we will focus on creating and building demand and conversions. So our ultimate goal is to position Australia as a top of mind safecation through B2B2C high impact media and travel trade integrated programs with a strong message. And we'll aggressively go digital and mobile to maximize exposure, leading to conversions. And how we can achieve that? In Korea, TV is the most influential media. So we will secure really popular TV programs to be filmed in Australia, and we've been already in discussion with some of the TV broadcastings. And we also plan to invite KOLs and influencers to increase online visibility. We all know that media coverage on TV and online will be crucial to deliver our message that Australia is ready. But more importantly, we will work with KDPs and airlines at the same time to develop related to products following those media coverage to maximize conversions. So it's not only media, it will be media plus travel trade integrated programs. ASP is the area that we've been more active than other work scopes. Every Korean uses Kakao as a main communication platform, like WeChat for Chinese. So we created the OJ Specialist Kakao account, as well as Kakao TV platform. And we've been currently holding Kakao Live TV training sessions for every 2 weeks, introducing all destinations and experiences. And we just finished 8 sessions so far for the last 4 months. And actually, our live webinars are very popular among travel agencies. For each session, nearly 250 OJ specialists attend, showing great participation and engagement. So even like other NTOs like Destination Canada, Brand USA, Out of France, they often contact us how we are able to do that, trying to get our know-how and so on. So it's a really great program, and our OJ specialist trainer, Juhi, is a superstar, making every session very fun and educational. Again, most of travel agencies are taking a leave at the moment. So we really think it's vital to communicate, continue to communicate with them and engage with them, providing latest information and increase their loyalty and product knowledge. So that's what we are doing at the moment via various online channels. And once the borders open, we will be more proactive in face-to-face trainings, along with the other programs and events lined up. Okay, the last page, last not but least, in terms of programs and plans with KDPs and airlines. Currently, we are working closely with KDPs to expose Australia for their early booking campaigns, where customers can receive added values if they book now. And other programs with airlines and KDPs are Remember Australia consumer events, utilizing their online media channels where consumers can leave their pictures or videos taken in Australia to win a small prizes. Aside from that, we work with KDPs to try to showcase Australia virtual tour programs to introduce unique itineraries focusing on Australia's road trips, outdoors or cultural experiences by hiring popular KOLs or local tour guides. Although those ones will be virtual guided tours, there will be more like previews or teasers, as we will eventually develop and distribute the same tour products once the borders open. So it will be a very good experiment based on the new trends to prepare the new era of post-COVID-19. And once the borders open, we will try to maximize the conversions again and make efforts in diversifying and expanding the products. Also, we will continue to work with airlines to recover and increase aviation capacity, which is the key factor to increase the number of Korean arrivals to Australia. Okay. That's all from me, and thank you so much for your attention. And I hope you had a better understanding on the Korean market and programs that we will carry out in this very challenging year. Okay, I will then hand over to all other panelists for Q&A session.
Great. Thanks, Gina. Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Andrew. We've had about 3 questions come in, so we'll try and tackle some of those and a couple others we had on, excuse me, on aviation. I think, Gina, you covered the first question I'm going to ask here in your area. It came in early on. That was a question on demographics of Japanese travellers, I guess, here. And we're getting this question asked in other markets as well about, you know, who we think are more likely to be the first travellers back into market. Is it going to be more a younger traveller? Is it going to be more a premium traveller? Is it going to be, you know, people solo travelling, families, you know, group travel, etc.? So have you got any sense of that there? Perhaps to you, Derek?
Thanks, Lee. Yes, I think inevitably it will be a mix of travel. I think older travellers who are potentially retired have that time available, and we saw from the surveys that a number of people are saying they have the time available and the pent-up demand. I think there'll be a real mix of travellers coming forward, and time will tell what that mix actually is. There may be a lot of working holiday people wanting to come, but I think our high value traveller segment which is our target segment and has been for some time, provides a whole lot of opportunities for us. And I would see quite a large demand right across the board there from those high value travellers.
Great, thank you. Couple of questions in from Yoshimi. Hi Yoshimi, ex-Tourism Australia person. I hope you're doing well up there on the Gold Coast. I haven't heard this discussion internally, but guys, where or are we having any discussions about marketplace at the moment next year for Japan, South Korea?
Yes, we are looking at our options there, Yoshimi and Lee. We're in the process of working out how we would satisfy that demand, and there are some plans being worked through in the case of Japan for some sort of event in early February, and we'll be able to give you more information as time goes on. But we'd like to be able to create that opportunity to help connect the Australian industry with the Japanese industry in a strong way, whether it be face-to-face or virtually or a hybrid type event. We'll come back with more information on that.
Sure. And
Same for Korea as well. We'll look into an opportunity to have that kind of virtual workshop as well for the Korean market. But the industry's sentiment is they don't think Australian border will open anytime very soon. So travel agencies, they prioritize those countries that already open for the Korean market. So we have some time to think about that kind of things as well.
Okay, thanks, Gina. And this is a more of a general question, I guess, from Yoshimi again about our competitors. What are they doing up in the market? I don't know, Andrew, do you want to take that, or Derek or Gina? Are we seeing any activity at all, or what is going on with them?
Generally, yeah, Derek might want to do that there. We are seeing pretty similar to what other countries are doing. Some are doing nothing at all. Some countries are doing nothing that have been traditionally being very strong in markets, so they've pulled right back and not even undertaking any social activity, any marketing activities. So I think we've continued to do that. We've been one of the only ones to continue our Aussie specialists, or the specialist training program, and continuing to do that, both in Korea and Japan as well, and been delivering that on webinars. So it's been a really important platform for us. And we've seen some other countries look to try and establish that now at a very late stage. So I think a competitor in Korea would be USA, and they've tried to establish more of that online training and trying to emulate some of what the great success that we've had in that area. But that's been on the basis of that they haven't had access to many of the travel agents and want to keep engaged there. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag, probably from our larger competitor set. I think we've been doing a little bit more around that social activity and keeping that dream alive, as well as making sure that we engage with trade, our aviation partners, and continue the training that we've done through the Aussie Specialist Program.
Sure. A couple of questions we've had come in offline. Maybe one for you, Gina. Asiana did some charter flights to Melbourne at Christmas time. Yeah, how did those go? Were they successful at all?
As I mentioned before, our bushfire, it was really successful. Their occupancy level, the load factor level, reached about 80%. So that's why they really like to continue to have a regular flight when the COVID-19 crisis ends.
And Derek, the other one was for you mate, was about those ANA flights that had started up not too long ago to Perth. How were they performing up until COVID?
Lee, they'd been doing very well, and I think had been exceeding expectations. So we're working very closely on a continuing basis with ANA and all of the other airlines that operate flights to and from Japan to help restore that air capacity to appropriate levels just as soon as we can. But yes, the Tokyo-Perth flights, which were operating daily, were absolutely very, very popular. And I think both from the perspective of ANA and also from the WA perspective, performed very, very well. And opened up a new opportunities and a new market.
Right. Thanks, Derek. And Gina, one for you that's come in. We've seen these running in some of the other markets where we've had suppliers and agents doing training or engaging. Yeah, there's a question here about have we got any webinars planned for South Korea engaging the suppliers and the agents?
As I mentioned, we hold bi-weekly webinars from our end as well. And the problem is the Kakao TV platform is not like Zoom. So there should be only one platform. That means the presenter has to come to Korea in our office and we have to present together. Otherwise, some other STOs who are not based in Korea, they send the video so that we can also play it together when we hold our webinar. So that's one of the ways if they like to promote their attraction or the product, then feel free to reach us, and then we can, we love to play that video for the training.
Okay, great. Thanks, Gina. And one other question we've had come in, I guess this is for either you, Derek, or Yuri. Japan's been a strong foodie destination. So when we say good food and wine being the key appeal for high-value travellers, what do you think that unique good food and wine appeal that we should be promoting is to Japanese HVTs? Is it about destination dining, fresh produce, wine tourism, a bit of a mixture? Do one of you want to tackle that one?
Yuri may well have some good thoughts as well, but Lee, from my point of view, I think it's an opportunity to look at our offering across the board and examine what kind of experiential food and wine products that we have, the high end, but also the availability of very affordable and regular food and drink offerings. So everything from cafe breakfasts through to informal lunches, through to the high end, clearly focusing on our wonderful produce. But I think for all levels of the hospitality industry, there are opportunities here to get to know the Japanese market a bit better, to understand the needs of the market, but also just to make their offerings better known to visitors from Japan through the various media and distribution. It's a huge opportunity. Yuri-san, you might have some thoughts on food and wine as well as to what will be very popular.
Yes, I think Australian food and wine is popular as an organic country, and there's so like we see lots of cafe in Melbourne. So the coffee culture is more getting popular than before. So we can promote coffee culture, and also for those who loves gin and whiskey. So the Australia is famous country for them, for the gin lover and the whiskey lovers. So that's the one category we can promote as well. And also the Australia has a beautiful nature and the wild heritages. So the place where you eat the beautiful food is the also important factor for the tourist. So we can promote, so you can have a beautiful foods in a World Heritage area, so looking at a beautiful scenery or something. So that's another point we can promote to the high value travelers.
Fantastic, Yuri, thank you. And look, everyone, on that note, we have just hit 12 o'clock, so we're right on time. So no more questions come in. So I would like to just say thank you to all our panelists here today, to Andrew, to Derek, to Gina, to Yuri. Thanks so much for your presentation. Thanks everybody for staying with us who's online here today. That does end this series of 6 market briefings we've done. A great note to finish on, I thought. But we'll say goodbye from us now, and we'll all be talking again soon online, no doubt. All right, bye.